questions for you. Sir, Mr. Ken Leon-Guerrero now.
I'm Ken Leon-Guerrero with the Guam Citizens for Public Accountability. And I'm here to testify in favor of Bill 122's intent, but I'm here to testify against its particulars. The bill as written does not do enough for the people of Guam to merit the sacrifice that it is of their hard-earned dollars. The major concern I have about this bill, it's very vague about what the increased taxes are going to go for. Everybody I've talked to about raising fuel taxes is in favor of raising fuel taxes if we could be assured that those raises would be used to actually fix roads. So the fact that the bill is trying to raise taxes, it's a good idea. The stated goal to repair roads is a good idea, but that's only the stated goal in the media. What we're looking at is based on past abuses of special funds. And I say, for example, just from the highway fund, the fact that we're funding the buildings at University of Guam, which only benefit 3,000 or 4,000 people. So if we're going to raise taxes on fuel, then those taxes need to be dedicated to something that everybody who contributes the taxes to can use, and that's village roads. Now, the director here said he can do half a mile of paving for $500,000 inside the village roads, and that's a good place to start. But this bill is weak. And when I say weak, we're talking about a penny increase. That penny increase doesn't even cover the cost of the study. The study was $1,150,000. So the first year of this bill won't even cover the cost of the study that was done to generate the highway master plan. So we need to be more aggressive. If we're going to raise gasoline taxes, let's raise them to a minimum, a level that matters. Right now, here on Guam, just between March and the end of June, the price of gas has fluctuated 45 cents, and the world didn't end. No one was tearing their hair out. In fact, I believe we just had another 10-cent increase just around 4th of July. And, there wasn't people committing suicide, and there weren't mass protests at Adelut. So the people are willing to bear a reasonable tax increase, provided we have reasonably ensured that that tax is going to go for the purpose stated. Now, one of the media, when I say media goals of this increase, was to provide funds to pay for a $50 million bond down the road. I submit, if what the senators are saying, that every penny increase increases revenue by $1 million, if we do a 10-cent increase and raise $10 million that goes to public works specifically for repairing roads in the villages, then we won't need the bond, and we won't have to pay $30 million to off-island investors. It would be better for us to raise the taxes, use the tax money to make the repairs, and not send the interest off, but instead use that $30 million we would have paid in interest and fees and use that to repair roads. And also in the media, and just recently, Senator Morrison has talked about that he wants to waive the public approval. And I think that is going to be a major mistake. And it's that type of thinking that has shattered the trust between the people and our elected officials. You are asking to raise taxes. Let the people approve it. And then we'll feel better about it instead of having something, just forced onto us. Now, the goal of the master plan was to improve transportation system. And I'm in favor of that because when I'm a senior citizen living on a fixed income, I don't know where you got the statistic that the average person uses 33 gallons of gas a month, but I very rarely go to town unless I have to, and I still use 16 gallons a week. So a 10-cent increase in gas is going to cost me personally, a senior citizen on a fixed income, $1.60 a week. $6.40 a month, $76.80 a year. Now there is a particular pothole in Agate that just cost me $800. Now to me, paying $76.40 a year to avoid having that repair would have been worth it. Every 2 years, I have to buy a new set of tires. Every 2 years, because I have a truck, I have to buy truck tires. I have to pay $800. In June, I just paid $800 for a new set of tires. And I'm not the only one. Everybody in this room, and even you guys up there, probably are buying new tires every couple of years. And the reason we buy them so frequently is because the potholes really wear out tires fast. And the majority of the potholes that we encounter are all in the villages. Not all of them, but just the majority, and especially the worst ones. So as you contemplate making repairs in the villages, I encourage you to remember Route 5, Route 5. So going back to what I said, I've been talking to a lot of people, not just about this bill, but about raising taxes in general. But we always talk about the fuel tax. And the fuel tax is low. It is way too low. Now, I've been on Guam for 10 years, and when I left, the fuel tax in California, I think, was 22 cents. We're paying how much? 4 now? How much are we paying? 4 cents a gallon? 5 cents a gallon?
10 cents, sir.
All right, so 10 years ago in California, it was 22. I don't know what it is now. So we have a lot of room to grow, especially if that money is going to something that people can see, something that people can feel. And that's the roads inside our villages. Now, several times in my testimony so far, I've talked about improving the transportation system. Instead of just using the money to fix the roads, there's one other thing that we could use this money for, and that would be to improve the mass transit system. Because if we use part of this money to improve the mass transit system, we take a tremendous number of vehicles off the road, which will slow down the rate of deterioration and allow public works to catch up. But more importantly, if we were to use a part of this tax increase to improve mass transit system, it would be an economic boost to the island. Could I get my slideshow, please? Now, as I start the presentation, I want to reinforce the point that right now the trust level in our elected officials is low for various reasons, and going around proposing to raise taxes and bypassing public approval is not a good idea. Next slide, please. Now, what we're looking at is a study that was done for the Guam Regional Mass Transportation when I was on the Governor's Committee to improve mass transit. And what we determined based on local information, utilizing formulas put together by the National Transportation Association, for Guam, the cost of a vehicle used daily to go to work is $19.23 a day. That's when you take the price of an average mid-sized car purchased used, 2 years or around 2 years old. The depreciation rate is $19.23 a day. Next slide. Now, this was back in 2014 when gas was actually higher than it is right now, and the cost was $9.54 a day for fuel. Next slide. Now, insurance and repairs for the average vehicle, we're talking late model, something that's less than 10 years old, runs $11.54 a day. We're talking 20 days, the work month. Next slide, please. So when we look at the depreciated cost of a car, next slide, we add to that the insurance and the repairs, next slide, and the cost of the fuel, next slide, we have a total operational cost of $40.31 a day for the average person. That's what it costs to own a car that you drive to work every day. Now, based on surveys that we did, we had people sitting at different locations, and we counted traffic at rush hour times. And on Guam, about 75% of the cars are single passenger only. Next slide, please. So when we look at the cost at a personal level, next slide, you take the commuting cost of $40.31 a day, next slide, and subtract a daily bus pass. That comes to an increase in disposable income for a family of $37.31. Money used to purchase gas and insurance leaves the island forever. We don't get the economic spin or the multiplier effect that we would if we gave every working family on Guam that used a bus $37.31 a day. I use myself as an example. Since I retired, my purchasing activity, my entertainment activity, and my local shopping has dropped dramatically because of the cost of transportation and my lower income. But if I could use the bus every single time I had to come to town, it would be, in effect, give me a $37 a day increase that I would spend locally. So instead of spending the money on gas, I'd go to restaurants. I'd be going to the movies. I'd be buying things here that I don't do now because I have to spend so much money on my transportation costs. And I know this to be true because when I lived in Honolulu for 12 years, I rode the bus 75% of the time. And when I rode that bus 75% of the time, I put less than 3,000 miles a year on my car. Here, retired, I'm putting 1,000 miles a month on my truck here on Guam, and I'm not alone. If we could capture all that money spent on auto and turn it into the economy, we would get next slide, please. If we could just, now bear in mind, there's only 125,000 cars registered on Guam. If we could get just 12,000 commuters from all classes, retirees, employees, students, to use mass transit system, this would be the daily influx into the local economy. Next slide. Taking that $37 times 12,000, it frees up $447,720 from auto expenses that go off island to cash that would be used on island. Next slide. So that works out to about $9 million a month. Next slide. Or $107 million a year. And there's an additional benefit to this as well. Next slide. There's $17 million on business privilege taxes that we would collect on this money that we divert away from the fuel stream into the economy that we're not collecting now. This is why the city of Honolulu, city and county of Honolulu, subsidizes their mass transit system to the tune of $10 million a year. They subsidize mass transit for $10 million a year. And what do they get in return? Scale of economy like this, because in Honolulu they have between 330 and 350,000 people ride the bus a day. So that's 330 to 350 times that $37.31 that is not leaving the island in the form of gas. So when we look at the goal of this bill, which is to improve the transportation system, a goal we spent $1.1 million to develop, let's fund it properly, because a part of that transportation master plan is the development of mass transit, and you see why. We don't have a mass transit system here. We have compliance with the ADA requirements of the federal highway guidelines. That's all we have. Because if you were to depend on mass transit for your job, you wouldn't have a job. And here's why. Next slide. Oh, pardon me. That's the Honolulu subsidy. And I'm wrong. It's 10 million. I looked it up. Next slide. This is the mass transit schedule. If you had a job, there's only 4 stops a day in Tumon. In the morning, 3 stops in the afternoon. And on other routes, there's only 3 stops in the morning and 3 stops in the afternoon. If I wanted to testify here today, I have to catch the bus in Agate at 7 o'clock. And then the next bus going back to Agate is 1 o'clock. And there have been times when I missed the bus, the 5:30 bus going to Agate, and there are no buses. So you see, we have a mass transit system that isn't geared to support commuters. If we were to take a portion or half of this money from this proposed increase of 10 cents that I'm talking about and divert that 5 cents over to mass transit, that would be more funding than mass transit has ever had. And if mass transit was running the way it should be run, then it would be a revenue generator for the government of Guam. Now, I want to make a point. Actually, there's 3 things we need to do, 4 things. First, we need to raise the fuel taxes, because as part of improving the mass transit system, you actually have to improve the roads in Guam, especially at the village level, if we're going to get our rolling stock to survive. Second, you need to appoint, and this is where the legislature comes in. Let's make sure the people we appoint to the boards are qualified. I've attended a large number of mass transit board meetings, and that board is paralyzed. They cannot make a decision on anything until they check with the front office. You could ask them to go, or should we use white paper or cream paper? We'll have to check with the front office. So that's the first thing that's wrong with mass transit. We don't have a quality board, and we don't have experienced management. The second thing is we need to shift the focus from a disability compliance-based system to a commuter transit system. If we had a commuter transit system, you would probably take 25 to 30% of the cars on the road daily off the road, and that would make Glenn's job a lot easier, reducing the wear and tear on the roads. And the third thing that we need to do is we need to look at how we can use this fuel tax increase to actually pay for the repairs and pay for improvements in mass transit system, and not use it as an opportunity to go out and borrow how many $100 million this $10 million a year will provide. Because if we were to take our mass transit system and take it from being a disability support system to a commuter system, an additional benefit, you would be pushing the economic benefits of the tourism industry beyond Tumon and beyond Micronesian Mall. Because the cultures that we pursue, from the Philippines, from Japan, from China, from South Korea, they're all mass transit system oriented. If we had a decent mass transit system, you would see tourism extend to all areas of the island, just like we see in Honolulu. In Honolulu, anytime you're on a bus outside of the tourist corridor, 50% of the people on the bus are tourists. They're using the buses to go up to North Shore and Haleiwa, Waianae, places like that. So if we had that system here, we would see tourism expand beyond the limited borders of Micronesian Mall, GPO, and Tumon. And that would benefit all of the island. We would see an economic boost from the shift from fuel expenses to local expenses. We would see an economic boost from the tourism expanding beyond, and we'd see more businesses develop outside of the Tumon, Agana, Tamuning area, and that would all go to benefit our population. And then along with those things, you'd see corresponding increases in the business privilege tax. Can mass transit survive on Guam? It already does. Next slide. This is the slide for just one of the 4 bus companies. There are now 4 Japanese bus companies on the island. Whereas the Guam mass transit I showed you has 7 stops a day in Tumon, this is 102 stops a day in Tumon. Think about that. One bus company is doing 102 stops a day in Tumon, and it's making money. Now, I say it's making money because you wouldn't have 3 other competitors in that same market if they weren't making money. So that goes to reinforce the point I made earlier that our visitors are mass transit oriented. And if we were, now you see them coming here in Dogania. There's a bus stop right across the street here now in front of the cathedral for the tourists coming out from Tumon. So it shows that if we had a mass transit system, not only would it benefit the people of Guam, it would benefit the tourists of Guam, and that benefiting both of those markets would benefit the government of Guam and help raise revenues they could be used in other areas. So if you're going to pass this bill, amend it and make it a bill worth passing. That is my testimony on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Do you have one from Darrell?
Yes, I do.
You just made his 5 minutes go down to 2. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, this is from Darrell Borja Taggarty to the Honorable Chairman, Joseph Augustine, and the committee. Testimony in favor of Bill 12234. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to comment on Bill 12234. I am in favor of the stated intent of this bill. However, it would not accomplish its stated purpose as introduced. I recommend that the bill be substituted by the authors or the committee with the consent of the authors as amendments to and to add a new section to Article 5 of this chapter, which articulates and accomplishes legislative intent to establish liquid fuel surcharges for specific public purposes. Article 5 of Title 11, Chapter 26 should be retitled to reflect the several surcharges established. The educational destination of the original automotive surcharge should be strengthened in the text. I have prepared a draft for your consideration, which is enclosed. I have not calculated the revenue estimates for this proposal, but it appears that a 4 or 5 cents phased in over 3 years is overly timid compared to the occasional 10 to 25% swings in gas prices the public and commercial accounts have become accustomed to over the years. 5 cents is minor. Repairs and prioritized construction of village roads should be a fully supported DPW activity through a surcharge at the eventual target level starting October 1 of this year. Only this bill's authors gain if the pressing need is not fully funded for 30 months. Smooth repairs, grading for drainage, hard shoulders, lane markings, pedestrian and cycling route accommodations are all possible with adequate funding, and rights of way are the only way to get from one private property to another. We, the public, gas up regularly to travel local roads in our cars and trucks of all descriptions. The government should aggressively and systematically maintain these very same roadways in a manner that we expect and can afford. In addition, I would like to comment on legislative establishment of special funds. Special funds reflect the weakness of the Guam legislature budget process and of laws which compel the executive branch to follow the budget as enacted. The special funds of Article 5 reflect the legislator's inability to calculate the capital construction, replacement, and maintenance cost of schools, mass transit, and village roads, and include them in the annual budget. Lack of regular maintenance directly causes public facilities to deteriorate before their initially projected lifespans. It degrades the public's enjoyment of these facilities, and we deserve better. In the early 1970s, Fairfax County, Virginia, published an objective method for calculating the associated cost of public facilities. It is available for use by all other public entities. As Guam is roughly the size of Fairfax County, and because their scope of public services is similar to that of government of Guam, their method is directly applicable to Guam. This legislature should use its oversight powers and professional staff capabilities to calculate for itself the projected cost of all capital facility maintenance and replacement, and challenge executive direction to implement capital management and include such details in the annual budget. We of the public know firsthand about lack of public facility maintenance and planning. It's been swept under the rug by lame excuses, most notably lack of funding. Appealing to adopt a park, adopt a road, adopt a school, happy labor concept, and community improvement zones. Shifting duties to the village mayor and their budgets and the like. It's overdue for each committee chairman in the legislature to address this system-wide shortcoming in detail at your level of responsibility, and for you to address it effectively within this, your elected term. Thank you for considering my perspectives on establishing a liquid fuel surcharge to benefit village roads. Sincerely, Darrell A. Borja Taggarty.
Thank you, sir. And will you be submitting? You'll be submitting that as a copy, right?
Yeah, and here's his copy of the proposed changes. That's included as well.
All right, and also a copy of your slides, right? You will be getting a copy of that?
Yeah, I will email you all a PDF of those slides, but it's the some of the details are included in my written testimony, which I will submit as well.
All right, thank you, sir. Now, as I'd like to also recognize, who joined us, Senator James Baldoni. Sir. Now, let me see, I'll start with the speaker. Would you like to ask any questions of the gentlemen on the board, on the panel?
That was very welcome testimony.
Thank you.
I have to admit that we were a bit timid. We were talking about a 4-cent, but then we thought we'd phase it in just to. But if you think that you're suggesting that we could do 10 cents if we went to the electorate in 2018 and not.
I have not talked to a single person in the past 6 months that has objected to an increase in fuel tax if we knew it would go to the use intended. A 10% increase, but this is the part. If you go to the public and do a very thorough education system, you have the government channel, present your case well over the government channel, and in a series of, like when the Election Commission puts out their brochure, put out a brochure that explains how much will be collected, what it will be used for, and point out that this money will be going to road repairs in the villages. And I would also recommend, as part of the legislation, that you prepare an annual report to taxpayers that this much was collected, this much was spent, and these were the roads it was spent on. I have talked to so many people that want to see mass transit system improve. The only thing that's stopping the mass transit system from being improved is the lack of money. Now, when we did a proposal, I was on the governor's mass transit task force. We put together a proposal that looked at a one-time infusion of $10 million and a $3 million a year cash infusion thereafter that would create a sustainable, commuter-focused mass transit system. And with that commuter-focused mass transit system, we could see all the economic spin-offs that we were talking about. But more important than that, there are 30,000 people on Guam that have disabilities. They suffer a severe deterioration in their quality of life because they are hostages. Yet Friday, I heard Kool-Aid on the radio pleading for someone to give him a ride on the 4th of July to the dialysis center because our buses don't run on holidays. You see, so that's what's affecting the quality of life. But it's not just affecting the quality of life of people with disabilities. It's also affecting seniors. How many of you know seniors who are hostages to their nieces and nephews or grandchildren for rides and transportation because they can't drive anymore? Well, that number is growing rapidly because seniors are the fastest growing segment in our community. We're outgrowing the millennials, we're outgrowing the children because family sizes have gone down. So the senior population on this island needs to be better served, and a mass transit system that's designed from the ground up to serve commuters will also serve seniors. And guess what? We already have many of the resources in place to do this effectively right now. So 10 cents would be a minimal, and if you do it through the public approval process, you won't have any of the pushback that you're going to get if you demand or if you try to do it with Section N, voter approval not required, because I can guarantee you there will be a lot of pushback on any revenue bills coming out of this building that have Clause N in it. Now you say Clause N because the last few bills I've seen, they bury it way at the bottom, Clause N, severability. So we're going to be watching these bills, and every time we see that voter approval not required, we're going to think 2018.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. I'll go to Will, and we'll work over here. Senator Will, you have any? Nothing? Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.